And now turning to the big focus story. 3 patients admitted to the intensive care unit of the Vijayanagar Institute of Medical Sciences Hospital in Karnataka's Bellary died after a power cut on Wednesday, 14th of September. The victims' families claim that the power cut lasted for 2 hours on Tuesday night and on Wednesday morning, leading to these deaths. Karnataka government has denied these allegations, but at the same time formed a 5-member panel to probe into the ICU deaths. According to one of the deceased, Manoj's brother, there was no power in the hospital for 2 hours that night and again in the morning. The doctors had to resort to using a balloon to manually pump oxygen. Manoj was witness to all of this. In fact, apparently he has recorded all of this in the hospital records, including the condition of his brother. The director of VIMS of this hospital in question, which is a state-run hospital, Dr. Gangadhar, has denied allegations and said both died because they were critical and not because of any power disruption, which he in fact says was a coincidence. The hospital says ventilators were connected to battery backup, and it was a sheer coincidence that these deaths happened during the time of the power cuts. After the deaths were reported, the Bombay government has sprung into action and constituted a 5-member team to investigate. The families of the victims continue to allege that power outage was the reason behind these deaths. Hospital authorities have dismissed those allegations. Let's go across to my colleague Neha joining us to tell us more about what is the state government's response and what exactly is the hospital saying. Because, Neha, good evening. It seems evidence is piled against the hospital from what we get from, the accounts of relatives and the sequence of events, the way it happened, and for the hospital to say that, well, it was a coincidence, but for 3 patients to die around that exact same period when there was a power outage, I think, it is a little difficult for the hospital to convince anybody that this could only be a coincidence. But what is the hospital version, Neha?
Well, yes, Afrida, what we understand now is that the hospital, has gone on to say that it was just a sheer coincidence that the timing of which these 3 patients died and, the timing of which the power outage happened was just a sheer coincidence. However, it's important to mention that, today we're seeing that the families of these patients have come forward and leveled allegations, grave allegations against the hospital, wherein they say that, there was a power outage for almost about 3-4 hours, owing to which the oxygen on the ventilator, the oxygen supply on the ventilator was cut, and because of which, in fact, these people even died. Now, we also had over there, a reaction coming in from one of the patient's relatives who said that the hospital informed them that the reason of death was oxygen shortage and that there was an attempt to actually shift these patients to another hospital, but it was too late. Now, having said this, while we're trying to keep the politics out of this issue right now, merely because of civic apathy in this case, the matter did reach the floor of the assembly, and we saw the Congress, in fact, the opposition leader, Siddaramaiah, over there demanding the resignation of the Karnataka health minister over this issue. And meanwhile, the government over here hitting back, saying that they've already formed a 5-member committee that's been constituted to look into this issue, and the needful is being done, and an inquiry has been ordered.
Inquiry has been ordered, so the state government is now saying that we should not jump to conclusions and wait for the exact report of this inquiry. Thanks, Neha, for joining us with the latest updates. But this is not the first case, and there has been a number of deaths due to power failure in hospitals, so it is not something that has never happened before. 2022, this year itself, in the New Medical College Hospital in Rajasthan, a 65-year-old woman died due to power cut for 3 hours. 2019 in Madurai, again in a government hospital in Tamil Nadu, 3 people died due to power cut for 2.5 hours. 2019, again, new government general hospital in Vijayawada in Andhra Pradesh, 2 people died within minutes of power cut. 2016, Gandhi Hospital in Hyderabad, 21 people died as power cut happened several times. So the point of the matter is that government and state-run hospitals has been lax about it. The seriousness of the situation is such that people who are on life support systems require uninterrupted power supply. There can be a minor disruption. It cannot extend to 2 to 3 hours as it did in these cases, which has led to the deaths of the patients. Let's in fact now listen in to how the Congress party is raising this issue. Congress leader Siddaramaiah in fact brought up the matter in the Karnataka Assembly. Let's listen.
Bellary Vijayanagara Medical College ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ ಆ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನಲ್ಲಿ ನಿನ್ನೆ ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ವಿದ್ಯುತ್ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ 8 ಗಂಟೆಯಿಂದ 10:30ವರೆಗೆ ವಿದ್ಯುತ್ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅದೇ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಜನರೇಟರ್ ಕೂಡ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಐಸಿಯುನಲ್ಲಿದ್ದಂಥ 3 ಜನ ರೋಗಿಗಳು ಐಸಿಯು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡದೇನೆ ಐಸಿಯುನಲ್ಲಿದ್ದಂಥ ಇವರು ಆ ವೆಂಟಿಲೇಟರ್ಗಳು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡದೇನೆ ಸತ್ತೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ನೇರವಾಗಿ ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ಅಡ್ಮಿನಿಸ್ಟ್ರೇಷನ್ ಜವಾಬ್ದಾರಿ ಆರೋಗ್ಯ ಇಲಾಖೆ ಜವಾಬ್ದಾರಿ ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ಇನ್ಚಾರ್ಜ್ ಮಿನಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಜವಾಬ್ದಾರಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಜಿಲ್ಲಾಧಿಕಾರಿ
So, Siddaramaiah, senior Congress leader, saying the hospital administration, the district authorities, the minister in question, the health minister, should take responsibility. Let's listen into what the victim's family has to say.
6ನೇ ತಾರೀಕು ಜಾಯಿನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ ಸರ್ 6ನೇ ತಾರೀಕಿನಿಂದ 13ನೇ ತಾರೀಕುವರೆಗೆ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಬೇರೆ ವಾರ್ಡ್ನಾಗ ಇದ್ದರು ಬೇರೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಈ ಕಡೆ ಶಿಫ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದರು ಶಿಫ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದರಲಿಂಚ ಆ 2 ಅವರ್ ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಹೋಗಿದೆ ವಾರ್ಡ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಮತ್ತು ನೈಟೆಲ್ಲ ಬೇಸಿದ್ದಾನೆ ಮತ್ತು ಬೆಳಿಗ್ಗೆ 6 ಗಂಟೆ ಸುಮಾರು 6:15 ಹಂಗೆ ಸುಮಾರು ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಹೋಗಿದೆ 11:15 ತಗೊಂಡು ಬಂದಿಲ್ಲ ಸರ್ ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಇಲ್ಲಂತೆ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಬೆಲೂನ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅವರು ಪ್ರೆಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ ಇಬ್ಬರು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗಿ ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ ಇಲ್ಲಂತಿಲ್ಲ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಅವ್ರು ಏನಂತಾರೆ ಕಂಡೀಷನ್ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗೈತೆ ಅಂತ ಅಂದರು ಆಮೇಲೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಪಕ್ಕದಲ್ಲೇ ಇಬ್ಬರು ಡೆತ್ ಆದರು ನಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಡೆತ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ಕನ್ಫರ್ಮ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಆಗಿದ ಮೇಲೆ ಅವರು ಮತ್ತೆ ನಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಬೇಸದ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದರು ಮತ್ತು ಬೇರೆ ಹಾಸ್ಪಿಟ್ಲಿಗೆ ಹಾಕ್ಯಂಡು ಹೋದರು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋದ್ಮೇಲೆ ನಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಒಳಗಡೆ ಬಿಡ್ಲಿ ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಸರ್ ಅದೇ ಇಲ್ಲಿದ್ದ ಕಾರಣ ಡೆತ್ ಆಗಿದೆ
So that's the entire account by brother of one of the deceased, who says that he was even made to press a balloon to pump in air for oxygen that was supposed to be given to the patient who was in a critical condition. He says how he saw 2 patients die just next to him during this period when there was a power outage. Let me introduce our panel, our guest this evening, Dr. Narendra Rangappa, spokesperson of the BJP, Bhavya Narshimha Murthy Congress spokesperson, and Dr. Ishwar Gilada, consultant infectious diseases and Secretary General of Organized Medicine Academic Guild. Very good evening, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. Dr. Narendra Rangappa, you heard what Mr. Siddaramaiah said. Of course, we are not going to politicize this issue. This is an issue concerning health of the citizen. You heard what the victim's relative had to say, and when you see the person, you know that these are not people who can afford private health care. They are dependent on the government for basic health care. And when you have a hospital that is providing critical care, you go to it hoping that your family member will be saved. But what happens is that the hospital becomes responsible for the death. Isn't this a greatest tragedy? Will the government, BJP government, take responsibility in Karnataka?
Let me start by saying that it is very unfortunate that 3 people have lost their lives. But making an allegation that there is negligence on the part of the ICU staff, negligence on this part of the government, I don't think it is right time enough to point fingers and fix responsibility, because we have constituted a 5-member team to go and look into these allegations made by different people in the hospital. What basic information we have that is that there was a short circuit, and because of the short circuit, there was a failure of the generator. Because the generator failed, we hired a private generator. The private generator also was used. And during this 90 period time, which was backed up by the UPS, we have shifted patients who were needing a ventilator and were on essential support to different parts of the hospitals or outside the hospitals on the risk of the government only. So, despite this, these 3 deaths have occurred. Now the question is, after the 3 deaths that have occurred, why it occurred, how it occurred, and when it occurred is the questions to be answered. So initial reports are claiming that there has been no negligence of any sort. There is no malfunctioning of the ventilator.
But you know,
There
the
is no lack
problem,
of,
Dr.
oxygen.
Rangappa, is when you do not acknowledge that there is a problem, that becomes a bigger problem. Because if there is a case of
have
power
acknowledged,
disruption
ma'am.
in the ICU, it
We
poses
have
threat to
acknowledged.
all others. That needs to be corrected. But the moment you say it's not because of power disruption, it's because they were critical, who is to believe that 3 people would die within that period of power disruption? And then you say we will now get into an inquiry and we'll find out.
No,
The
no, we
idea
have
is
an
to at
open
least
mind.
accept that there's been a problem, sir. We don't
we
want
have
more
an
people
open
dying in
mind.
the same ICU because of power cuts.
We have an open mind and we are going to investigate the issue. If anybody has committed a mistake, he'll be severely punished. We'll not let him go. But we have an open mind. We are not having a biased opinion or a biased mind like we are going to play politics over death. No, we should not play
No, why
politics over
can't the
death.
hospital
And we are
say
not biased. We are
that
open
there
to
is
the
a
investigation.
problem with the electricity systems, there is a problem in engineering of the electricity wiring or the supply system, that this happened and let's fix that? Why can't the hospital come out with the truth? What happened? What short circuit? Why would you take a chance of that nature in the ICU? And the reason I'm saying this, sir, is because this has happened repeatedly. I'm not saying they've only happened in Karnataka. They've happened in other states as well, Bhavya Narshimha Murthy. The idea is to take responsibility when something of this nature happens, rather than shifting the blame, rather than buying time and trying to make an excuse saying, no, it's not the power cut, it's the patients who were rather critical. 3 of them died in a government-run hospital in Karnataka. Your response?
First thing, unless you fix the responsibility and acknowledge that it was a mistake, you tend to repeat it. You cannot ignore and say, no, this happened coincidentally or whatever. Three patients died. It is too good to be a coincidence. Second one, you fix the responsibility, at least the relatives of those victims.
Okay, I'm afraid we are having a difficulty with the audio link there. Again, I would just put out those facts that we've taken out, because this is something that runs across states. A number of other states also have reported this kind of instances where the state-run hospitals are lax in maintaining their systems. It's clearly an issue of maintenance. In many of these cases, it simply wouldn't do to say, okay, we will now have an inquiry and let's wait for the report to come up. Things get forgotten. Dr. Ishwar Gilada, in your experience, what is the reason that, you can have an ICU without uninterrupted power supply? There can be a situation where the life support system goes off for as long as 2 hours. Isn't this something that only the poor people are subjected to, those who need government assistance, government medical care?
Afrida, a life is a life, whether it's a poor man's life or a rich man or middle class life. Secondly, as my colleague was telling, the most important thing in any setup is accept the problem. So if you are in denial, a second stage is blaming others, third is a recognition, and fourth is a resolution. So if you spend time only in denial and blaming others or attack, counter-attack, you are not going to get to any solution. Secondly, coming to the main issue of power supply. Hospitals have been always privileged to have a better power supply than other places, like offices, etc. So there has to be 3 steps there. Number 1, the power supply should be uninterrupted. So there should be a special kind of lining. Secondly, there should be generator mode available to any hospital, whether it's a small or big, even a district hospital or a taluka place hospital. As soon as power goes up, a generator should automatically start. And thirdly, the equipments which are there, like in ICU or ventilator, they should have their own UPS. Most of the time, what we see, UPS, though they say it will work for 15 minutes or half an hour, they do not work for more than 5 minutes. So I think UPS manufacturer should ensure that whatever they are saying that half an hour it will supply power, that it should supply at least 30 minutes, not 29 minutes. So once that is done, then the issue is solved. Having worked in government earlier for 10 years, owning up the responsibility is also important. If you are wrong somewhere, you say that something has been amiss. You see that the next kind of episodes are avoided. And by that way, you can avoid the next lives. If 3 lives are going in one go, I think has to be something seriously amiss. And that has to be recognized.
The reason, Dr. Gilada, I brought up the fact that here is, in all likelihood, a poor family affected. 3 families are shattered today. The reason I brought that up is because when you listen to the man, you can tell that he's seen it all. He has seen right there, and which is why we played it out for you, that in front of him, his brother died. He was made to pump oxygen with a balloon. I don't know how that works. But the fact is, here is not somebody who can go to the highest court and hire the biggest lawyers and make sure that the guilty are punished, which is why the hospitals get away with it. They know they can get away with it, and therefore they give this excuse that it was a coincidence. It wasn't due to power disruption. They were critical patients. Patients die in ICU. So they're trying to wriggle out of the situation, knowing very well that the relative of the patient was very much present there to witness what happened. Dr. Narendra Rangappa, ये जो dodging and denial है, it is not going to help matters. When Mr. Siddaramaiah raised the issue in assembly, there was a ruckus. The speaker simply switched off the mics, not even allowing the responsibility of the opposition is to question the government. And in this case, I would say legitimately so. Why would you not hear out an opposition leader?
We were definitely listening to him. Then when our turn came to answer and when his turn came to listen to it, he was not ready to listen to us. He's not ready to listen to any explanation that we are trying to give him. So it was his party which created a ruckus in the assembly. For that reason, the speaker had to shut it down.
So my question to you is, if you are saying that let's wait for the report, let's wait for the report. Why is BJP Minister Shri Malu saying, I don't have interest in politics, 100% died not due to power failure? How did he come to this conclusion? And the medical superintendent there apparently has given him some report based on which he is saying they have died due to health issues. Either you stick to your own position that let the report come out, but this is where we get suspicious that there seems to be some cover-up. Why are you beginning with the premise that there was 100%, these are his words, which my research team has given me, 100% the patients did not die due to power failure? You've already come to that conclusion. You're being defensive.
No, we have not. We have not come to the conclusion. We have constituted a committee, a neutral committee that will go and inquire and find out what has happened. And we'll correct it, and we'll also find out if there is anybody who is responsible for this fox pass. If this has been committed by any person, he will not go unpunished. We'll take severest of severe action.
Not just Mr. Srimalu, your Law and Parliamentary Affairs Minister, J.C. Madhuswamy, also says one death was due to chronic kidney ailment, the other was due to snake bite. So all of these deaths happened precisely during that 2-hour period that there was a power disruption. So who are you trying to fool? This is something which is unacceptable, sir, because this is not, something that the citizen is asking, which is, the moon that we are asking for, basic health care. And just a few days ago, it happened in Kerala, where an ambulance door did not open and the patient died. That's the level of apathy in state-run hospitals and in their emergency services. Dr. Gilada?
Afrida, actually speaking, we cannot take this kind of stand where we provide a judgment without trial. We always go in denial. We say that somebody was above 60 years of age, therefore died, or somebody had a problem, therefore died. Yeah, there is a problem, therefore he came to hospital or she came to hospital. People do not go to hospital for sightseeing. So if people are there in hospital and they were there for some element, that element has to be looked after. Just because somebody died of some issue, maybe in power supply, negligence or whatever, then you say that person died of that particular ailment for which he was admitted or she was admitted, that is wrong. So I think we should have some kind of SOP in place that if suppose power supply goes away, what is a mechanical thing available? Can that be handled? If there is some kind of mechanical ventilation, mechanical ICU, mechanical things that can be done. So that SOP should be in place. So there are two things. One is what has happened this time. There should not be any politics. All opposition party, ruling party and medical community should be on one board that if negligence is there, yes, negligence is there. But on the other hand, for long run, you should have a SOP in place that we should always learn lessons from any kind of incident, that next lives which are going to be lost should be saved. If that is there, then all should come above board, about casteism, about any religion, about any region, whether government or private, life is a life. So we should come to that level that, okay, we should form a SOP, and that SOP will be applicable everywhere.
There is always a hospital version and there is a family version. We go with what our reporters have given us in terms of what they as journalists report, and therefore we put out those figures which have come to us. Sure, the hospital will have another version. Sure, the government will defend itself. But, you know, sometimes it simply doesn't help to deny. It probably would help if we can address the issue. Bhavya Narshimha Murthy is back with us. Yes, Bhavya ji.
Hi, I'm not sure if you heard my arguments the last time.
We missed your point that you were making. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah. So I honestly think the government needs to take the responsibility first, because 2.5 hours is too much to fix a power cut. There has to be another alternative or a plan B if there was a power cut. When you have ICUs in a hospital, 2.5 hours, okay, 30 minutes, we can understand. But 2.5 years is too much. So there needs to be someone who should be taking the responsibility, and there needs to be the right punishment for it. Otherwise, I honestly think, these kind of problems or this kind of mistakes that the BJP spokesperson calls this will be repeated.
Okay. Right. On that note, thank you very much, Dr. Narendra Rangappa, Bhavya Narshimha Murthy, and Dr. Ishwar Gilada. Thanks for joining us with your perspectives on this subject.
Thank you.